If it turns out that the God of the Bible endorses slavery, does that change your opinion of him?
Well, first, I feel like we have to define what the Bible means by slavery.
Owning another human being as property for life.
It's property for life. Yeah, if you could show me that the Bible teaches that that definition of slavery is okay, then yeah, I'll be willing to leave the religion.
Fair enough. I appreciate that response.
Wow, we're gonna get an instant convert.
We don't
I
get
can
that too
feel it.
often.
Yes,
All right.
sir.
Leviticus 25, verse 44 through 46. As for your male and female slaves who you may have from the nations that are around you, from them you may buy male and female slaves. Moreover, you may buy the children of the strangers who dwell among you and their families who are with you, which they beget in your land, and they shall become your property. And you may take them as an inheritance for your children after you, to inherit them as a possession. They shall be your permanent slaves.
Interesting.
Welcome to atheism, my friend.
Not quite, because let me read, and also forgive me if I'm a little bit nervous. This is my first time ever joining a live.
Sure.
Give me 1 second here. Okay. How do you reconcile the verse you just read with me with Exodus 21:16?
Oh, easy.
I should have said it before he did.
Well, first of all, um, if you think that Exodus 21:16 is about not having slaves, then you're just introducing a contradiction in the text because Leviticus clearly says you can own slaves. That being said, Exodus 21:16 has nothing to do about acquiring slaves. It's about
Okay.
kidnapping Hebrew people and making free people slaves, which was against the law. In fact, that's against the law in all the ancient Near Eastern law codes. Unless you're at war with somebody, you are not allowed to kidnap people and turn them into slaves. But even in the
Okay.
Bible, if you go to Deuteronomy chapter 20, God says that you
What?
can kidnap people and make
Sorry.
them slaves.
Okay. Can you give me the Leviticus verse again?
Yeah, Leviticus 25, 44 through
25,
46.
6. Okay. 1 second. All right, I'm just
Uh,
looking this verse up.
while he's doing that, the thing about Exodus 21 is, right, 21:16
Okay.
says what
And
it
then what
says.
was the verse you're bringing up right now? Deuteronomy
The next one I was going to get is Deuteronomy 20, verses 10 through like 21.
20.
It
Let me
literally
get
says
one
you can
second.
kidnap people.
Okay.
But the thing about 21:16, right? What else is in 21?
I'm
Yes.
sorry. I can't hear Mac.
You can't hear Mac?
Oh, was
His
it just
voice is
low?
kind of low.
Oh, I
Yeah.
got it. You can hear him.
I
He's
said
just quiet.
I
Yeah,
said
my bad.
the thing about 21:16 is that it's bookended by other verses telling you what you can do with your slaves,
Right. It says you can beat
including
your
selling your
slaves.
daughter
Right.
and including beating your slaves.
Right.
Where does it say you could be your slave?
21:20.
Okay. Anyone who beats their male or female slaves with a rod must be punished if the slave dies as a direct result.
Read the next verse too.
But they are not to be punished if the slave recovers after a day or two, since the slave is their property.
And that's not even actually a good translation. It says if they stand for a day or two, which is typically translated as survive. If they survive for a day or two, then they're not going to be punished.
Okay.
So
What translation does it say that? I'm on a Bible Gateway, so
it's most translations will say that. For example, if you go to the New King James, which is they try to do a word for word translation where possible. It'll
okay.
say that. It says, notwithstanding, if he remains alive a day or two, he shall not be punished, for he is his property. But the Hebrew word amad just means to remain standing or to stand for a period of time, right?
Okay. Let me just read that real quick. Let me see. You can hear me fine, right?
Hmm.
Okay. There you go. All right. So it says, and if a man smite his servant or his maid with a rod, and he die under his hand, he shall be surely punished. Notwithstanding, if he continue a day or two, he shall not be punished, for he is his money.
Right. And this is basically suggesting that if your slave is beaten so severely that like a couple days later they unalive, you're not going to be punished for it because it's presumed to be an accident or it could be something else. But if you beat your slave so severely that they do unalive immediately, then it becomes murder. But it's also true that this whole chapter is about Hebrews. It doesn't say anything about foreigners.
Okay. Interesting.
Well, that's a whole other can of worms.
It
What are your
is.
thoughts on that? Yeah.
Because God gives Israelites permission to execute foreigners all the time. In fact, he
Yeah.
says in chapter 25:46 of Leviticus, of the foreigners, he says, these you can actually treat as though they're slaves. But as for your fellow Israelites, you can't treat each other harshly, which means he's giving them permission, explicitly to treat the foreigners harshly.
Right.
All right. So, a common, I guess, rebuttal to this that I hear from people within the faith is that slavery back then was seen as quite different to what we think of slavery nowadays. Meaning that if, back in the days, if somebody is literally dead broke, no food, no job, can't earn an income,
Thank you, Curtis.
um, I'm sorry, that
No, I'm
kind of
listening.
messed with my
I was
train of
just
thought.
saying,
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah,
I was saying thank you to somebody. Thank you, Curtis.
yeah, it's my first time using TikTok. All that kind of threw me off.
It gets
Mhm.
the
Anyways,
screen gets really busy when people start sending gifts
yeah.
and whatnot.
Okay, so common rebuttal is that people back in those days would voluntarily give themselves up as indentured servants so that they could pretty much have, a place to stay, food, their family can be taken care of. How do you, I guess, rebut that?
Yeah, Exodus 21:7. Do you have your Bible on you?
I have the Bible Gateway
Yeah,
website right here.
read it for all of
Well,
us.
it I mean, that definitely does exist, and that's in there, and there are distinctions between them, right? What you're talking about is like indentured servitude, essentially.
Yeah, what was the verse? I'm sorry.
Exodus 21:7.
21:7. And if a man sell the daughter to be a maidservant, she shall not go out as the men servants do.
Right. Yeah, she's a permanent
Yep.
slave, unlike the Hebrew males. The Hebrew males are not permanent slaves. According to verse 2, they get to go free after the 6th year is complete. So you can even sell your own Hebrew daughter as a slave, and she becomes somebody else's slave.
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm kind of looking at the entire chapter. I'm reading the
Mm-hmm.
entire chapter real quick.
Mm-hmm.
If he came in by himself, he shall go out by himself. If he was married, then his wife shall go out with him. If his master has given him a wife, and she has borne him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall be masters, then he shall go out by himself. And if the servant shall plainly say, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out free, then his master shall bring him unto the judges. He shall also bring him to the door or unto the doorpost, and his master shall bore his ear with an awl, and he shall serve him forever. So yeah, that's talking about permanent slavery. That sounds voluntary to me,
Yeah, but it's only
right?
voluntary because otherwise his family gets ripped apart. You see the part where if he comes in as an indentured servant and the owner provides him a woman and they have a family, he can't take her with her. The woman and the child are permanent slaves of the owner. So his only option to keep his family secure, to keep it together, is to become a
Mhm.
permanent slave.
Interesting. Right. Okay.
Right. So to me, this is just is trickery, is what it is. If God really thought slavery was bad, He would have said, "Hey, if you give a woman in marriage to one of your indentured servants, when he goes free, she goes free because they're married." So here, the value of the woman being a slave is more important than the value of family and marriage to God.
Okay. Yeah, you see it that way. Um, it's very interesting to see it that way. And I like hearing, the opposing opposition because I'm not someone who like to blindly believe. I like my faith to be challenged,
Mhm.
and I like hearing these arguments. And of course, I'm definitely taking what you're saying uh, through my studies because I am a new, I guess,
Mhm.
converted to Catholicism.
Yeah.
Well, I
Well,
wouldn't say
I mean,
converted. I came back. I was, I guess a cradle Catholic, and then I got baptized earlier this year. So,
right.
and I really am interested in apologetics. So I want to, kind of put myself in the fire.
I get it. I was doing the same thing
Yeah.
when I was a young Christian. I was doing apologetics. I was having all these discussions. It took me a long time to be honest with the book to realize that the morals of the God are not good. It gets science and history wrong at every turn. And like the New Testament theology contradicts the Old Testament theology, and Jesus didn't fulfill any miracles. That was the last straw that broke my camel's back, was realizing that Jesus didn't actually fulfill any prophecies.
Which one? I'm sorry, he did not fulfill any prophecies.
Zero prophecies.
What about the one where David was saying in the Psalms? Um, I forgot which one it is.
When his
I'm
hands were
not
pierced.
versed in the Bible at
It's
all.
You know,
David
when
was talking
Psalm
about
his
before
hands were
22.
pierced.
Psalm
You're talking
22.
about Psalm 22, and that's not a prophecy. Psalms are not prophecies. Unless the psalmist says X, Y, and Z will happen, it's not a prophecy. You can't just take any random Bible passage and convert it to a prophecy. That's not how prophecy works.
Did you mean 20 verse 2 or chapter 22?
It's Psalm 22, verses 16 and 17.
16 and 17.
Yeah.
Dogs surround me, a pack of villains encircles me. They pierce my hands and my feet, all my bones are on display. People stare and gloat over me. They divide my clothes among them and cast lots for my garments, which is exactly what happened with Jesus.
That's
Is it
exactly
not?
what happened to David.
Right. So
So
the
so
Bible,
who's writing the psalm?
I believe it was this one is David.
Right. And the entire psalm, all of 22, is about David writing about his struggles, about his own present struggles. Not a single passage in there is about a Messiah. It's not a prophecy. It's just a psalm of lament.
Yeah, from what I was told was that the Old Testament, it kind of like the whole Bible has, references. I guess the Old Testament references the New references the Old,
But it doesn't.
and this is what I'm seeing. I'm
Right.
The
But
new
seeing.
definitely references the old, but it doesn't go both ways.
but the problem we have with Christianity, right, is we actually do have very clear messianic predictions in the Old Testament. None of them get fulfilled. The only
Which one's
thing,
that?
Isaiah
If you could be
chapter 11, Micah chapter 4, Micah chapter 5, Zechariah chapter 9. You also have Jeremiah chapter 33, Ezekiel chapter 36 and 37. And really, the whole second half of Ezekiel actually is pretty important.
okay.
So we have very clear prophecies about Jesus that none of them actually get fulfilled. They contradict the New Testament, in fact. And when we talk New Testament, when they say what's fulfilled, they keep pointing back to things that aren't even prophecies, right? So if I could just take anything in the Old Testament that looks similar to something I've done, I could do that. I can find 100 prophecies that I've fulfilled. And I know that because I've assembled a list of them. I've got a list of like 30 prophecies, in quotations, 30 prophecies that I fulfilled if the only metric is that there are similar sounding words on a page. But prophecy,
Okay.
as it turns out, is a specific genre. It's when God reveals information that wouldn't otherwise be known, and it's almost 9 times out of 10 a prediction for the future.
Okay. So I'm just taking notes so that I could study further on
Fair enough.
this.
Yeah.
I know when I was a new, I guess when I wasn't really taking my faith serious, I would take all these, I guess, atheist and Protestant arguments against Catholicism specifically, and I would just, take it at face value. So I definitely want. How often do you do these streams?
Usually 3 nights a week. And to be sure, like, if you're going to pick a branch of Christianity, Catholicism is probably the most palatable of them. I mean, the doctrine of hell and purgatory and heaven in Catholicism makes way more sense than Protestantism. Like, in Protestantism, basically everybody goes to hell unless you've given your life to Jesus, which is asinine. At least in Catholicism, like, if you're a good person, you'll probably end up in purgatory.
Yeah, for sure. That's kind of a relief to hear that, being, I guess, surrounded by Protestants my whole life and saying that my Catholic faith is from the devil. But so one thing I want to ask you is what exactly, because you said that the psalm that I mentioned, it's not a prophecy. What, for you, what is your standard of how the Bible is talking about prophecy?
My standard comes from Deuteronomy 18, and I'll put it on the screen for us here real quick. Give me a second.
Okay.
So if you go to Deuteronomy 18, I went too far. There we go. He says, I will raise up for them a prophet like you from among their brethren. He will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak to them all that I command him. And it shall be that whoever will not hear my words, which he speaks in my name, I will require it of them. But the prophet who presumes to speak a word in my name, which I have not commanded him to speak, or who speaks in the name of other gods, that prophet shall be unalived. If you say in your heart, how shall we know the word which the Lord has not spoken? And then the answer comes, when a prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, if the thing does not happen or come to pass, that is the thing which the Lord has not spoken. The prophet has spoken it presumptuously, and you shall not be afraid of him. So a prophecy is something that is testable, it's discernible, and you know when
Okay.
somebody is delivering it. It's not something that you accidentally find out later was a prophecy. He says in the book of Amos, I do nothing before I reveal it through my servants, the holy prophets. So a prophecy is not a mystical thing that you have to dig into the Old Testament to find. You don't have to dig into things that aren't actual prophecies and ask yourself, oh, is this actually a secret prophecy? You don't have to do that. You have the words of actual prophets in the Old Testament. All you have to do is read those words and ask yourself, did these predictions come true?
Interesting. Okay, so then that would lead me to this question. Let's say we're living in the Old Testament times and we are hearing, I guess, one of the prophets speak. Let's say you and me hear it the moment he says a prophecy, he says something will happen. Um, I guess my question is like, what is the time limit for you? Is there a time limit for that prophecy to be fulfilled?
Well, sometimes, like in the book of Ezekiel, I think in chapter 18, God tells Ezekiel that the prophecies will no longer tarry. He's going to fulfill the prophecies from here on. He's going to fulfill them imminently, right? So there are times in which God says the prophecies are imminent, they're coming now. And then there are other times that don't really have a time limit. Like we have Isaiah chapter 11. Isaiah chapter 11 is definitely a prophecy about the Messiah, but it doesn't really give a specific timeline. But later in the book of Isaiah, we've got messianic ideas or messianic eras in which the prophet seems to be suggesting is going to be right after the Babylonian captivity. So between like 539 and like, I don't know, maybe 400 BCE. So you just have to take each one as it comes, right? Some of the prophecies give you a timeline. Some of them give you a general idea. and some of them are kind of open-ended.
Got it. Okay, so then that would mean that would lead me to two conclusions about what you said about Deuteronomy 18. That's either um, Deuteronomy 18 is complete, I guess, BS, and it's a lie, and God's not real, and I'm a new atheist, or that means that there is more to Deuteronomy 18 that I guess I have to look into, and if I can't find it, you, my friend, have converted me to an atheist.
And it's a hard thing too, because it's really difficult to leave a religion, especially to leave God. To me, it was the most painful thing I ever did, right?
Yep.
Because you're leaving everything behind. But I think if we just
Right.
examine like some of the hermeneutics that are applied in the New Testament, it'll become pretty obvious why you might want to reject what the New Testament says. And I want to read two Old Testament passages with you, if you don't mind.
Before we do that, would
Mhm.
you agree with me, my, I guess, ultimatum with Deuteronomy 18? If because you said that Deuteronomy 18, it says, I'm not saying that you said, but Deuteronomy 18 actually says that a prophet, whatever he prophesies will come to pass. But then there is no, like you said, there is not necessarily a time limit for it. So
Right.
am I correct in saying that? So there must be more, or it's complete BS, right?
That's
One
true.
or the other.
Yeah. Yeah. It's possible that some of the prophetic visions, the ones that don't really
Mhm.
have timeline connections, that you could just say, hey, they haven't been fulfilled yet. You know what I mean? The problem is
Yep,
that, Mhm.
because in I guess Revelation, that's John prophesizing about the end times.
Right.
Um, what I was taught was that some of the prophecies has came to pass, and that necessarily it doesn't mean that each prophecy will happen one time. That there's always gonna be an antichrist coming.
Sure. But there is a
And
sequence, right? So like a lot of people
right,
say in Revelation chapter 16, it talks about the Euphrates River drying up. You've probably heard this one.
mhm.
But
Yes,
the plague on the Euphrates River is preceded by 5 others, right? And those 5 other ones never happened. And even preceding that, there's a vision about what's going to happen with the beast. And the beast is clearly a reference to Nero. It refers to the number of a man, the number of his name, as 666, which is clearly, if you do the Hebrew gematria on it, it comes out to Neron Kaiser. But interestingly enough, if you look at the Latin manuscripts, which I know you'll probably be familiar with eventually if you're Catholic, the Latin manuscripts say 616, not 666. Which, oddly enough,
I've
if
also
Mhm.
I've also heard 636.
I don't know of any of those. We've got 616, and we've got 606, and we've got 666. And
Yeah.
616 is the Latinized spelling of Nero Caesar. That's the way we pronounce it today. And then there's also another one, 606. If you do the gematria on 606, it comes out to Gaius Kaiser, which was a nickname for the Caesar. So all of the manuscript traditions that we have are pointing to the fact that this is somebody in the first century at the time that the time of writing in which it happened. And even chapter 13, it talks about how the beast was mortally wounded but was revived. Well, that's a legend that people believed about Nero Caesar. In fact, so many people believed it that the Parthian army, a resurrected Nero Caesar, a pretender that looked like him, convinced the Parthian army to go to war with Rome, believing that the resurrected Nero was leading them into battle and that they would march into Rome and reinstate Nero as the Caesar. It didn't go as planned. The Romans trounced them. It didn't go well at all. But the fact of the matter is, everything in chapter 13 about that beast matches everything we know about Nero. And so if that beast is Nero, then it just continues to confirm that everything in that book was something for the first century, which is why Jesus, when he speaks in that book, says over and over again, these are the events that are soon to take place. And if words have meanings, then we have to assume that soon meant something. We can't assume that the word soon meant thousands of years later. To me, that's just being dishonest with what the words are. Like, why would Jesus use the word soon if he didn't mean the word soon? Is
Yeah,
he
that's a good point.
is he
Um,
incapable of choosing words?
no, of course not. I believe he was very intelligent and chose his words.
All right.
Um,
But I want
'Cause,
to
yeah, I do believe he's God, so I believe he was,
kind
you
of read
know,
you two passages.
yeah, absolutely.
These are two of
What
my
is it about?
Mhm. Well, Jeremiah
Passages?
33 is an actual messianic prophecy. Like it is actually about the Messiah. Like it is very clear, right? Um, I want to put it on the screen
Yep.
so you can see it. It says, "Behold, the days are coming, says the Lord, that I will perform the good thing which I have promised to the house of Israel and to the house of Judah. In those days and at that time, I will cause to grow up to David or for David a branch of righteousness. He shall execute justice and righteousness in the earth. In those days, Judah will be saved and Jerusalem will dwell safely. And this is the name by which the name by which she will be called. The Lord is our righteousness." Now, this is a really important part, right? Because it
Yep.
says, "For thus saith the Lord, David will never lack a man to sit on the throne of the house of Israel, nor shall the priests, the Levites, lack a man to offer burnt offerings before me, to kindle grain offerings, and to sacrifice continually." Well,
Yep.
this is a direct contradiction of what the New Testament says about the Messiah. Paul, in multiple writings, also in the book of Hebrews, chapter 7, says that these sacrifices and offerings, they were temporary. They needed to go away. Now that Jesus came, we don't need the law of Moses. We don't need the sacrifices. But Jeremiah says when the Messiah comes, there will always be sacrifices and there will always be a king on the throne.
Okay.
Right?
And how I see that, before we move on to the second verse, how I see that is burnt offerings and sacrifices. Me as a Catholic, I think you know that Catholic priests have mass every single day, and well, yeah, we offer the Eucharist as a sacrifice every single day.
Well, the Eucharist is supposed to be the body of Christ being
Yep.
imparted to your physical body. I don't know if we would constitute that a sacrifice unless it's a sacrifice of Jesus' body. But
Oh yeah, right. So how I was taught it works is that every time the priest consecrates the host, we take part in the sacrifice that Jesus did on the cross for us.
right,
So that's, I guess, part of the burnt offerings.
right. But he says burnt offerings, grain offerings, right? So these are actually specific offerings. Like if you read the book of Leviticus, chapters like 3 through 5, you will find these specific offerings. They weren't like these vague notions of offerings. They were like actual rituals with specific materials, right? That's why.
But so yeah, but Jesus, isn't he known as the Lamb of God? And weren't lambs used as the, I guess, burnt offerings to God?
It could be a lamb. It could also be another animal. For example,
Yeah.
there were instances in which you could give even a donkey, although a donkey wasn't clean. So typically you had to break the neck of a donkey and then replace the carcass with a clean animal.
Right.
But there are other animals, like you could sacrifice a bull or an ox, and that was okay. That was clean enough. So we've got multiple animals, and typically when we refer to a burnt offering in Hebrew, that's the olah, that's typically referring to like an animal of the herd, like something that would be akin to a pack animal, like an oxen or a piece of cattle, and then something more akin to like a lamb would be more for like a household type of sacrifice or for like a personal sin offering. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why, wasn't that why Jesus came? I, you know, for me, us Catholics, I don't know about any of the Protestants. Well, not most Protestants. Anyways, us Catholics, we believe that Jesus came to fulfill the laws of the Old Testament. Um, he says that he didn't come to, abolish any of the laws. He came to, I guess, give us a new covenant because the laws of the Old Testament were specifically for Israel,
Well, Jesus didn't
and
say
Jesus
that.
came for the Gentiles.
Paul said that. Paul said that the law is for the Israelites and not the Gentiles, not Jesus. Jesus says in Matthew chapter 5, verse 17 through 19, that whoever does the law and teaches others to do the law will be called great in the kingdom of heaven, and whoever teaches people to not do the law will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. And this matches because when the Messiah comes, according to the Bible, we're going to have grain offerings, we're going to have burnt offerings, and we're going to have all the other sacrifices forever. What do we need these sacrifices for if God is doing away with them?
I don't see how, well, I'm not gonna say I don't see how, but I don't believe that he did away with them. Like I said, he came as the ultimate sacrifice so that we don't need to, go out and kill donkeys or ox or etc.
Okay,
Jesus came as a, final sacrifice. The law is still being fulfilled in that we are still offering the sacrifice, which was Jesus, when the priest consecrates the host and we take part of it.
okay.
Does that make
So
sense?
what's the grain offering?
I'm not sure, honestly. I honestly haven't even read the entire Bible. Haven't really studied it, but it's, you're definitely giving me a nice challenge to do so for
Yeah.
sure, because I honestly thought, I didn't think you were as knowledgeable with the verses as you were. So, um, I do appreciate this, on a trial by fire, I guess.
No, it's okay. We see this a lot. Most people walk into my live, they have no idea what we're going to talk about. They don't know where the conversation is going to end, and they don't know how much I know.
Yeah, and that's why I didn't come, cocky and interrupt. And, I want to listen to opposition. Yeah, that's the only way I learn,
No,
pretty much.
you've been a great guest. You've been a delightful guest to talk to.
Can I ask you a
Appreciate it.
couple questions?
That's me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Can you hold on? Let me actually
Is
raise
it
my volume. All right,
okay? Yeah.
go ahead.
Let me. Is the volume okay?
Yeah, it is now.
Okay. So, would you say it's better to be somebody wandering in the desert in the first century, or somebody in heaven living eternally? Seated at the right hand of the Father, basically.
You're asking which one is better?
Yeah, preferable.
I don't know. It feels kind of there's some hidden intent here, but I'll play along. The second one for sure sounds better.
Yes, it's like super obvious, right? Like so
Yep.
obvious it feels like a trick, right? So, but the question then is that a question that leads me to that I haven't really gotten a good answer for is what was Jesus' sacrifice?
What was Jesus' sacrifice?
What did he sacrifice?
He sacrificed his flesh for our sins so that we could have salvation in our sins. And like, I'm sorry, what was your name?
Mac.
Justin. Okay,
Well,
I was
Oh,
talking about
Justin's
Justin.
the host.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
Justin, and this is Mac. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry, I completely lost my train of thought there.
it's okay. It happens.
So, let me go back to what I was saying. So Jesus came as, he took on human flesh, sacrificed his flesh, so that, we may be saved. But okay, now I remember. Justin said us Catholics believes that it's not necessarily, that, excuse me, I had a burp. That everybody, I guess, who does good, I guess if you follow the law, follow Jesus unintentionally without ever hearing Jesus, you Catholics believe that there is salvation for those, for people.
Yeah,
Not
but
we're not
I'm
like
just talking about
Protestants,
the sacrifice itself
right? So the sacrifice
and
was for our
what
sins.
was being sacrificed. Because to
Jesus,
me, it sounds like an upgrade, right? But what did Jesus sacrifice? What did Jesus give up? Because to me, it sounds like an upgrade.
his life,
Is he dead?
he died, and now he rose up from the dead.
Right. So he's not dead.
No, he did die.
He's not dead.
No, he's not. He's
Right.
not currently, but he did when he came here in the flesh.
Right. Like if I was to go and get like that leg lengthening surgery they get, right? I would
The
be out for
the
a
what?
while. You know, like you go over to Asia and it can make you like 3 inches taller by, putting extensions in your leg bones, right?
Okay,
So,
I didn't know that.
what is it? I don't know why that popped in my head, but I was actually going to go with like breast implants, but
Mac,
that
are you
wouldn't make
telling us
sense for me.
something? Are you getting ready
It's
to have a
I
surgery?
might
Or?
have might have a complex.
we love short
Um,
kings. Come on, man.
no, I mean I'm not short, but
I
uh,
am. So
yeah,
I need the leg lengthening surgery, guys.
I'll find a
Yeah,
number
I'm
for you.
1 inch from being the perfect male. I'm 5'11", so
Yeah, I'm 5'11" too.
there
But
we go.
Fuck
the
both
point
of
of it
you.
is, right? So I would be out and then I would be back, right? But I would be
Yep.
taller, right? So I'd have that sacrifice of like the pain and the mobility and all that stuff, and then I'm back and I'm better. That's not a sacrifice. It's the same thing with Jesus. It's not a sacrifice, right? That's the way I
Well,
see it. I
yeah,
haven't
but
had
you
a.
you didn't sacrifice, you do the ultimate sacrifice, which was your life. Wait, I mean, Jesus
He
said that,
did. He didn't either. He's not dead.
he did die though.
But
He's
he's
not
not.
dead,
No, he's not currently dead, but that
right?
doesn't,
So he went through death as a way to eternal life. So that's not a
right.
That's what I'm getting at. It's not a sacrifice. I can't see it as a sacrifice. I haven't had a satisfying answer yet.
So, okay, I'm gonna write this down.
Right, because what he's saying, and I've had this conversation recently as well, like if Jesus took on the suffering that we would have to take, right? If he took
Hmm.
our punishment, well, our punishment is that we're going to be forever dead,
Yes.
right? Which means if Jesus is not forever dead, then he didn't take on our punishment.
Yeah, that's another aspect of it for sure.
Well, we're gonna be, I guess, forever dead in this, I guess, realm. Once we die, there's no coming back
Right.
to life unless you're Jesus.
Let me let me ask you
according
a
to our
question
faith.
though.
Yep.
So I like the Catholic version of the afterlife better than the Protestant version because it includes purgatory. When you've already said, like, if you're a good person but you don't believe in Jesus, you can still like find yourself in purgatory and then eventually in heaven, right?
Oh yeah,
Um,
there's still salvation. Like I don't believe that all Protestants are going to hell just because they're not Catholic. They didn't partake in the communion.
right, but
But
for
yeah, go on.
me, right, okay, let me give you a scenario, right? Let's say Mac
Yep.
and I that we open up an orphanage and we live our entire life like Mother Teresa, right? We sacrifice our entire lives for others and whatnot. But it just so happens that we don't believe that the Christian God is real. We're not convinced of this God, right? Do we go to hell or do we go to purgatory?
I don't think that's a question for God. But would you go to hell or would you go to purgatory? That's, I don't know. Um,
Well, the reason
well,
why
yeah, let
I
me.
ask, go ahead.
Mhm.
hmm
Okay, yeah. So part of my, I guess, because I guess that what you put out there was kind of incomplete. My question would be then, would you want to, I guess, believe in God? Would you want to believe in this Christian God the way, I'm granting your situation where God isn't real, whatever. Would you want to believe in Christ? Would you want to, in the way that we Christians, portray him as what we believe he is? Would you want that?
Well, I want to believe whatever is true, right?
Yeah,
So
same answer.
yeah, so if this God is true, I want to believe in it, but I just don't see a reason to,
Okay.
right? So
Yeah.
if I end up in purgatory, well, we've got two issues. If I end up in hell,
Hmm.
it's weird to me because for the only crime of not believing, I end up in the same place as Hitler, and to me that's asinine. But if I end up in purgatory, then it seems to nullify the whole point of Jesus dying for my sins. Like if I can just not believe in Jesus and not believe in Christianity and still end up in purgatory and then ultimately in heaven, then it seems like we don't really need Jesus for anything.
Okay, let me ask you something because purgatory is something I studied a little bit on because I have a Protestant friend who I'm trying to convert to Catholicism.
Go for it.
What,
Yeah.
what do you what is purgatory? What do you understand about purgatory?
Well, purgatory by definition is a location in which you are purged of your sins. That's how the name comes about. And it comes from a combination of Jewish texts and the apocryphal texts. Now, you're a Catholic, so you have the apocryphal books in your Bible, which I say it every time I'm live. If you own a Bible that doesn't include the apocryphal books, just take it out back and burn the damn thing. You don't. It's not doing you any help. You cannot understand all of the New Testament until you've read the apocryphal books. That being said, if you read the book of Maccabees, it becomes abundantly clear that they had this idea of the afterlife, that somebody could be in the afterlife and you could pray for them, and eventually they would make it into paradise. Now, this is actually congruent with what the Jewish people believed, which is obvious because the book of Maccabees is a thoroughly Jewish book. And in fact, the part where somebody prays for the dead, part of that chapter is quoted in the book of Hebrews. The New Testament is quoting from the Apocrypha on a dozen occasions, right? So the book of Hebrews literally quotes from the same chapter in which we find people praying for the dead in that they would be released from purgatory, theoretically going into paradise. Now, if you read the Jewish Talmud and the Dead Sea Scrolls and Josephus and Philo and the other Jewish works, what you'll discover is that they did believe in this afterlife of purgation. For example, in the Talmud, they believed that you could possibly go to Hades if you were unrighteous, but the punishment by fire that you would experience down there was only to purge you of your sins. And even the worst human being alive would only be there for 12 months before you would be allowed to enter paradise, right? So we have this thoroughly Jewish idea of purgatory that makes it into the Jewish text of the Apocrypha that the Catholics, being intelligent, actually picked up on and said, yeah, we kind of like that. The Protestants, who didn't study any of the Apocrypha and don't know anything about Jewish literature, completely missed it.
You know what? As an atheist, you are smarter than most Protestants. I'm gonna just put it out there. Let me okay, I have my notebook here because I took notes
Look at
when
Josh.
I was studying.
Josh in the comments is shouting, the New Testament never refers to the Apocrypha. And you, Josh, are wrong, and you're embarrassing yourself because you haven't actually read the Apocrypha or the New Testament. In fact, I've got a list of quotes in a document, in a Word document, of all the quotations that the New Testament makes of the Apocrypha. So you're welcome to come up next after MC, and I'll
Preach,
gladly cook you.
Preach. There we go. I like that. Yeah, that made me real happy to hear that. Wow, for a long time I thought I was just crazy, you know,
You're not
just
crazy.
surrounded by Protestants and hearing that 63 books. I'm like, what? Okay.
Yeah, also for
So
anyone watching, if you subscribe, if you're a member on YouTube or you're a subscriber here on TikTok, you have access to my cheat sheet. In my cheat sheet, my Excel cheat sheet, there is a tab that is dedicated. I have a whole tab dedicated to it of just all the quotations from the Apocrypha that show up in the New Testament. It's right there. It's already documented. All you got to do is open up the spreadsheet.
I'm gonna need to subscribe because I have something to bring to my Protestant friend now. But you're strengthening my faith, you know, as backwards as it seems. But no, like I said, I am open to hearing counter
Well,
arguments to just faith in general. But
send me a DM so we can be friends, because I don't want to lose track of you. Because I wrote a website article years ago where I went through the first 400 years of every early church author, every single one that we have. And I documented every time they quoted from the Apocrypha, every single fucking time. And it took me months to document it. And as it turns out, everybody, until you get to Jerome, said that the Apocrypha was prophecy.
there you go.
It was the word of God. It was inspired by God. And Justin Martyr went out of his way to accuse the Jewish people of trying to remove some of the apocryphal works because he claimed that they lended a prophetic word to Jesus. He actually believed that the Apocrypha should be canon and that the Jews were were conspiring against the Apocrypha because it would point them towards Jesus. So everything in the early church would lead us to believe that the Apocrypha was considered to be canonical, scriptural, and inspired for at least the first 400 years.
Yeah, wow. That's amazing. I appreciate you saying that because all I hear is that from Protestants, who cares about the church father? I don't care about the early church fathers or well, my friend that I was speaking to specifically about purgatory, he says that I guess that the religion was lost until I don't know 1800s or something. Well, which so happened to be the birth of Protestantism. But
Right.
I'm sorry. Going back to purgatory, what I've learned from Catholic sources regarding that is that purgatory is not necessarily purgatory is not I guess a place where you go
Right.
uh, to get purged from your sins, I guess.
Right.
It's not a second chance. It's not, an eternal payment. If you're pretty much if you're in purgatory, you're already saved there because the only two places you go after death is heaven or hell. Um, so what I learned from purgatory is that it is a process of cleansing your earthly attachments. I guess if you're struggling with lust, but you fight it and I guess, you've done everything else right, but you still have that kind of attachment. You go to God purges that sin from you because um I don't know why, but yeah.
Right.
Um
Hmm.
Purgatory,
Have you
I
read
see
Augustine?
I haven't, man. I really want to yeah, study on the early church fathers because they're brilliant.
Because the early
But
church
what I hope
fathers bring it up, by the way. And it's not just a Jewish concept. The early church fathers write about
yeah,
it. Augustine, if you've read The City of God, which I think you can get for free online, you can get a free PDF of The City of God. He mentions something really interesting. He says that some people have to temporarily suffer here on the earth, and
yep,
then others temporarily suffer after they die before they get to enter paradise. And
right.
so he tapped into this Jewish expectation that there is this temporary suffering after death to purge you of your sins. But obviously, there are some that were so unrighteous, they were so dirty that even purgatory wasn't fit for them, right?
Yep. So, okay, kind of circling back, all the way back, with what you asked, if that someone like you, in your example, open an orphanage, live like Mother Teresa, I mean, Mother Teresa suffered, so I don't think you
Yeah.
want to live like Mother Teresa. She suffered a lot if you read
Yeah.
her works.
I've got mixed
But
feelings on Mother Teresa. I like her, though. I know she gets a lot
yeah,
of grief in the atheist circles because she had some pretty horrendous viewpoints on a couple things. But overall, as far as I can tell, she tried to help people. And to me,
right.
that speaks a lot to my heart. I find a burden on my conscience to help people. Now, that might sound funny as an atheist because I'm helping people leave religion.
Hmm.
But I get it. I feel the burden to help people.
Okay. So yeah, man, I like you. I honestly do. I
Right.
didn't think I would, but yeah.
Well,
Anyways, going back, if let's go back to that example. If you and Mac were to, build an orphanage, live like Mother Teresa, and you were go to purgatory, what was the point of, um, I guess Jesus' sacrifice?
right.
So what I have for purgatory in a nutshell, just to kind of wrap this up, was that only Jesus can save us. If we go to hell, there's no way out. So purgatory is not kind of like that get out of jail free card.
Right. I
If we
agree.
experience purgatory, we are saved already. So if we're going through that purgatory, it's because we're guaranteed a seat, in the kingdom of heaven. Also, Jesus works with us until judgment day. So our death doesn't necessarily determine where we go because Jesus will work with us even after our death until, we are judged.
Right.
And nothing happens apart from Jesus and the cross. So, anyways, what's the point of all that? What I would put you and Mac in that situation, I would put you in the same category as I guess aborted babies or people that's never heard, live in the remote islands.
Right.
I would put you in that category. I don't know what's going to happen with you, but as a Catholic, God, he doesn't forget his people.
Right.
If your intentions are good, I don't even want to go there because I'll sound Protestant if I say that. But yeah, I
I
would
get
put you
you.
under there. I don't know what will happen, but God won't forget you.
Right.
But if we're being like, if you're an atheist now, if you are saying that God isn't real, Jesus isn't real, it's clear in the Bible that says that if you deny him, he'll deny you.
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly. Yep. And Revelation 21:8 says those who don't believe go to the lake of fire.
right?
Right.
So that's the only variable that's missing is if you are denying God.
Well, can I
And I
ask you a
know
question?
yeah, go for it.
So my question on that, and this is the same question I would have for a Protestant. So
Hmm.
if it turns out that I go to hell for merely not believing, why is it that not believing something is equally as horrific a crime as like sending 6 million Jewish people to the gas chamber? Why do I end up in the same place as Hitler?
How do you? Well, because to answer that, let's see. How do I phrase this? Not believing, I don't think not believing is black and white. There's a difference between, not if you don't know Jesus, if you've never heard of Jesus, how can you believe in him, right? It's at that point is it's if you've heard of him and if you choose, like, I don't want any part of that. I don't want Jesus and this Bible. I don't want to follow the law. I'm gonna do my own thing, follow my desires. Now that's you wanting to be willingly separated from God.
Right.
So if
Sorry,
you
go ahead.
choose that, yeah, if you choose that, if you want to separate yourself from God, follow your earthly desires, then yeah, you will. Hell is a place pretty much where God is not there. You're separated from God. You chose to be separated from God, and that's what He'll give you.
All right, cool. All right.
That's yeah.
So, Tim Campy, thank you so much for becoming a member of the Kraken Elite on YouTube. Big W, Tim. I think if we get like 3 more members on YouTube, I get to add more emojis. It's not like TikTok where you get 35 emojis. Like the more members you get, the more emojis you can add. So I think we're up to like 5 emojis, but I think if we just get 3 more members, I think we can add another 2 or 3 more emojis. So thank you so much for being a member of the Kraken Crew Elite. Now, here's the thing though. Okay. So what you're suggesting is that like if I don't believe in the God, he only has one choice. The only choice that he has is to send me to be tortured, right? But to me, I don't think that's logically coherent because God is all powerful. What he could have done
Yep.
is created a world in which good people that just lack belief, right? We can go and we can do our own thing. It doesn't entail any torment, any flames or anything. And there's actually no reason why people who don't believe in God need to be tormented.
Oh yeah, but like I said, it's kind of different. Uh, Belief is a difference between belief and denying. Like I said, a fetus. I don't think fetuses, have that kind of consciousness where they could choose to believe in Jesus or not. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, I know what
they
you
can't,
mean. Right, but
they can't make that decision to say, I've heard of Jesus, I've heard of what his promises were for me. I reject it. I don't want any part of that. A fetus can't do that. So if they're aborted, and of course, this is just a hypothetical. If they're aborted, I personally don't believe they're going to go to hell, but God at the end of the day chooses.
right, right. So I want to respond to that. Thank you for that. iReactor, Dexter, Aaron, and David, thank you so much for the additional subscriptions. David even gifted a subscription to somebody else. I really appreciate that. That is very helpful. I think here tomorrow, then, I'll be able to upload more emojis. It should be great. Okay. So what I'm trying to figure out, right, is what about me not being convinced of something, right? Because whether I believe in the God or not is not a matter of me being a good person. It's a matter of me just being convinced whether or not something is true, right? If I was
Right.
convinced that this God was real, I would have no problem confessing belief in the God, according to Romans 10:9 and 10. If you confess with your mouth and believe in your heart that Jesus Christ is Lord and that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. If I was convinced of these claims, I would do that thing, right? But I'm not convinced, right? All the evidence that I have before me leads me to believe that the claims of the book aren't true, right? So I'm trying to figure out why it is that for me, just to not be convinced of something means that I should be tortured.
If you're not convinced of something, then you should be tortured. I don't believe that's true. I don't believe if you don't believe, if the only thing is that you don't believe, meaning, well, so let me put it this way. Let me forget what I said before. All of us have some kind of, grew up with, I guess, an understanding of morality as we grow up. Lying, we're taught that is bad, but all of us have lied. No one had taught us how to lie. For most of us, no one taught us how to steal. No one taught us how to kill. That's kind of, we grew up with that innate morality inside of us, which I believe comes from God. And of course, other things have to come in play, like your mental consciousness. If you have that mental capacity to understand belief, um, your maturity to understand that belief. Like I go back to that example of fetus. It probably doesn't have that mental capacity yet, or like a toddler, let's say. So for me, it's not if necessarily if you don't believe. For me, it's if you deny. If you deny God, then you will be eternally separated, because denying God is, if you deny God, He'll give you what you want. You don't want to, you don't want to be with God. You'll be separated, and that's what hell is. Because God, I believe, God is good. The definition of good is God. So if
Right.
you want to be with God,
Maybe the way to put it is this: suppose you got to design, like God gave you the creative power of you can create your own universe and you can govern it however you wish, and you can
Mormon.
decide what happens to, yeah, something like Mormonism, right?
Okay.
That he's going to give you a set of created beings, and you determine based on your own standards whether they're tortured or not tortured for eternity. You get to decide who comes in or out. Now, the first question we have for you, right, is
Hmm.
if let's say these beings didn't think you existed, would that be a one-way ticket to eternal torture, or would you not set that standard?
I feel like there's more missing to that. If they didn't know I existed, that's not necessarily grounds for you to
Okay,
be
great.
tortured.
Okay,
Like
okay, great. Now,
like I
what
said,
if they denied that you existed? But what if they denied you existed? Would you decide that that's a criteria that automatic eternal torture, or no? What would you decide? God's giving you the choice.
uh, I'm sorry. Can you repeat that? I was kind of trying to come up with an
So
answer while you
you
were
get to
asking that.
decide.
Hmm.
You get to decide what the created beings, where they're destined for eternity, eternal torture or not eternal torture. You
Yep.
are the judge. God has given you the power to judge them how any way you want, and God won't judge you for how you judge them. And so you make a list of stuff, right? Okay, if you do this stuff, you go to hell or you get eternally tortured. And I guess is what is on that list is one of those things. If they deny your existence, would
Yep.
that mean, would you count that as a standard or a criteria by which automatic torture?
I got you. Um, Look, I hope you guys don't think that I'm trying to beat around the bush here.
No,
Uh,
no,
I
we get it. We
Well,
used to be
here,
Christians.
if you want to prevent that,
I think we
yeah, if
maybe
you want to
need a little
prevent that, just give
clarification.
your answer and then explain.
Okay, so to answer pretty much your question directly, if they deny I exist, then yeah, you'll go to hell, and here's my reasoning to that. And
If they
I
deny
you
your
know,
existence,
yes, if given your set of
why do you
circumstances, your
care about
situation.
that? Why do you care about them knowing about you?
Well, because as you know, I'll because let me explain why. Yes, because pretty much I get all my morality from God, and this is how God works, and this is how my God works.
No. God is giving you the choice of
Right.
how you
Yes.
are the judge in this universe.
Yes, and that's a lot of power for a filthy scumbag human being like me to hold.
Oh,
I
you're
hope.
not a filthy scumbag. Come on. You're the
Yes,
nicest guest we've
sir.
had all
Yes.
night.
He's
Yeah,
definitely a
I'm
Catholic,
nice,
though.
but you've only known me from however long we've been talking. But for if I were to be given that situation, I would definitely base everything on what the God of the Bible, his morality. If I would base my decision on that because I believe God is eternally good. He's the ultimate good, and if they
So you would
deny
just
my belief,
copy paste whatever. So you would just copy paste
yeah.
whatever God criteria. Okay, what if the criteria for the
Hmm.
Christian God were something like, if you blink 3 times in a row, you're going to hell? You would just take that as your own standard.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yes.
Come
Now, see,
on,
this
MC.
is like, yeah, this is kind of our divide because you guys don't believe in my God, so you guys, I guess, don't believe. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but do you guys believe that my God is moral and the ultimate good or no?
It doesn't right now. It doesn't matter what we think. I'm actually interested in you, right?
Right.
I'm wondering how far you'll go to say, okay, this God is no good anymore, right? It seems like this God could have any standard, any morality, and you would still follow him. That's what it sounds like right now.
Well, no, not necessarily
Okay, so
because
great. Okay,
hold on
so
once.
if God decided, look, if you blink 3 times with an interval of a second in a row, okay, you're going to hell no matter what. Would you think that that's would
If
you think that
my
that's
if
evil?
my God says that, then yes. But
Okay, now who are you
that's
using your whose standard are you using there? Your own?
I'm using the standard of based on the hypothetical you're giving me. If my God says that is wrong, then
No.
yeah, I believe it is wrong. So, but of course, my
Oh
God
wait, I
doesn't.
misunderstood him. Wait,
My
he said
my God doesn't, believe that. I'm basing on what says in the
right, but
Bible.
if God said that anybody that blinks 3 times in a row, they're going to hell, they're going to be eternally tortured. You would copy that standard into your universe that, hey guys, if you blink 3 times in a row, even on accident, okay, you're going to hell.
Okay, no, of course I would not. But
But
that's only because, in reality,
I thought you were
God,
going to
my
copy
God.
paste.
Well, yes, I would copy paste my God what based on what the Bible says about what my God, is what he wants from us. If you're
But God,
saying
God
that,
can set any standard He wants, right? God, look, it's within God's power to set any standard He wants, right?
yes, sir. But if I may, if it just real quick,
Okay,
if I
so
may finish, if I might finish, my God doesn't say
yeah,
that. So, of course, God, if you could show me where God says if you blink 3 times in a row and you go to
that's not
hell,
the
then
point. Look, this is why look. That's not the point. Let me
yeah,
explain. Look, if someone said, "I'm going to do whatever the law tells me to do," whatever the law says is okay, I'm going to think is okay. In other words. Now,
yeah,
what would we do right now? Our laws are actually more or less reasonable, especially concerning some of the more extreme, evils. But the problem with saying I'm gonna whatever I find the law to be okay is not what I'm gonna be okay. If the law were you got to turn in your minorities to be put in concentration camps, right? Then you're gonna,
yes,
if you're sticking to that principle, you're gonna think, right? So you get, even though it's not true that there are
yep,
any laws where you have to turn in minorities into concentration camps, right? It's sick for someone to say, well, look, whatever the law says, it's okay.
yep. You know what? I totally agree with you. Thank God that my God doesn't believe that. Or
You
yeah.
didn't understand. What do you think my point was? I don't think you understood my point.
Your point was that if I had that ultimate decision, why would it be okay for me to copy and paste what God God's law if God's law is
No.
immoral.
I'm responding to this. You're trying to rebut me by saying, "Hey, my God doesn't actually think that if you blink 3 times in a row that you're going to
Yeah.
hell." Fine, okay. But the point is that if he set that standard, would you think that that's a good standard?
Okay. No, I see what you're saying. So no, I wouldn't. And if that was the standard, I would not believe that God,
Okay,
whoever
so
set that standard, is God.
how do you determine which God standard is good and which God standard is bad?
How do I personally, or like,
Yeah, because you determined that if God set the standard that if you blink 3 times in a row, you're going to hell, that's a bad divine standard. That's a bad God. Okay?
yes.
Now, what are you using to judge God there? And I'll give you, I mean, you're actually using what me and Justin are using, our own values. We have our own values.
Yep.
Okay? And so now it looks like you're more independent than you think, right? It's if you created your own universe, right? You don't have to copy paste whatever God says, right? You can just have rely on your own values. And now the question is, if you had your own universe with their own, created beings or whatever, and you set the criteria for who goes to hell, would that criteria be that you have to accept your existence to avoid something like hellfire?
Would you have to accept my existence? Well, no, I would. My standard, of course, if you don't want to be with me, if I promise you, hey, you want to come with me in my mansion, where I have a room prepared for you, like Jesus says.
Well,
If it's an invitation that you have the option to accept or reject. So if you reject it, and in your hypothetical, if I am the ultimate source of good, then, and you want to be separated from the ultimate source of good, then of course the logical conclusion would be that you would be in hell, in
Right.
suffering.
But can I buttress the point that Danny's making? Because I think there's 2 points that I think he and I are both trying to make, and I'm not sure if you're catching it or if we're not being clear. But there's 2 very important things. One is we can't accept or reject something that we have no knowledge of, right? So like if I said I don't believe that Brahma and Vishnu exist, right? Well, that's just a claim that I'm convinced of. I can't control it, right? I can't
Right.
choose to believe in the Hindu gods. And I can't choose to believe in your God any more than I can choose to believe that the sky is green. So our belief is not something that we get to choose. We can't choose to believe in something. So I think that's what Danny's one of the points that Danny's getting at. That's one of the points I've been trying to get at is
Right. Okay. No, and I thought, I don't know if you guys understood what I was trying to say. My last point was that at the end of the day, if like Danny said, if God gave me that authority, if I'm the ultimate source of if I'm God of my own universe, and I send out an invitation to my people, my creation, to come with me and be with me in paradise, they have that option to accept or reject it.
Do you think it'd be egotistical to say, look, in order to avoid hellfire, you must accept my existence? Do you think that would be a little egotistical?
No, because like I said, it's an
Well, then tell
invitation.
me,
It's an invitation for you, for
What-
my creation.
but
If I am the ultimate source of good, like God claimed He is, and He invites us to be with Him eternally in paradise, we have that option to either accept it and reject it. And if we reject it, and He's the ultimate source of good and all things pleasurable and non-suffering, if we reject that, then of course we go to the other side of the spectrum, which is suffering, pain, and pretty much eternal death.
right, but to Danny's point, and he there's 2 points I don't want to lose sight on. You're saying like that we have an invitation. We don't.
Yes.
Like the invitation we have is like a crumpled up note that somebody scribbled pencil on, and then it got rained on, and then somebody stepped on it, and then they threw it into our mailbox. I have no reason to believe that invitation from God is from God, right? So we don't have the evidence. We don't have the information we need to accept the invitation. We have no information that would lead us to believe that this God is any more real than any other God from any other mythology. The God of the Bible is just as fake or just as real as Zeus or Hydra or anybody else, right?
Right, and that's where I would like put up my hands and say you are absolutely correct in that at the end of the day it is a religion, you know, just
Right.
like just like how every other religion you know has their set of beliefs. It's ultimately up to us to believe it or not. I chose, and I've, you know, for me personally, I've been blessed to always know that the God of the Bible is true and he's there. And even when I had my doubts, I've always kind of like there's like try to affirm my faith. And I'm of course, like I said, I'm putting myself in the fire here with you guys, you know, in the lion's pit
Yeah,
and testing my faith.
you're doing great. Yeah. But
Yeah.
but to the point, Danny and I. So I was a Christian for 20 years. Danny, how long were you a
Yeah.
Christian?
Probably about 15 years.
Yeah. So it's not like we didn't want to believe. Like the fact of the matter is, when you just look at the evidence, eventually
Yeah.
you're going to be persuaded one way or another. And we were
Right.
we were persuaded against Christianity, and
Yeah.
and so to the second point that Danny's making, and I've been trying to make as well, is okay. Well, there's something that we're not persuaded of. Like we can't choose your God because we legitimately don't believe that your God is real. But the second problem is, if we don't choose your God because we don't believe that your God is real, the only alternative is that we're going to be tormented in the hellfire, right? But to me, that's a false dichotomy. When you have a God that is all good and he's all loving and he's all powerful, there's no reason why that God can't say, you know what? You did the best you could. I forgive you. Come on in. Or he could have made a third alternative. He could have said, you know what? You're a good person. You just didn't believe. Let me send you to a place where you can dwell, but you're not being tortured by the hellfire. The hellfire is not like an inevitable consequence. The hellfire is a decision that God made. God decided that there would be torture, there would be hellfire, and then he decided who was going to get it. But he didn't have to decide that. He could have decided on 100 other combinations.
Right. So to your point where you were saying God is all good, God is all love, you also have to mention that God is just. And God has to, and he, you know, judges us based on the law. He says, do not lie. And I think every single one of us are guilty of lying.
Sure.
God says, you know, if you hate your brother, which means if you hate somebody else, you commit a murder in your heart. I personally have hated, regrettably. And for me, that makes me a murderer. You know, God has to judge us based on that. Yes, he's good. Yes, he loves us. But at the end of the day, he's God. So he is also justice. So if you choose, I guess, not to believe, he has to judge you based on what you bring to the table, which is, you know, our lies.
But
Well, I don't want to kind of, you know,
I don't
diss
want
you
to
guys.
I don't want to cut you off, but I want to make
Yeah.
sure you don't keep repeating the same mistake. We're not choosing to not believe. Like whether or not we believe in something isn't a choice that we're making. It is just a statement of fact. We don't believe in the thing. We're unconvinced, right?
Can we work within this invitation analogy? And let me say to you that, like, I'm inviting you to this awesome party. It is going to be the best thing you've ever been to, best event of your life. Here's the address, and if you don't come, I'm going to burn your house down with you inside. But it's going to be an awesome party. And then you go and take the address I gave you, and you look it up on Google Maps because you don't want to burn in your house, and there's no house there. So you're like, oh, that's kind of weird, right? You say, gave me this address. I'd expect to see a house there. It's like, maybe it's new construction, right? So then you drive by yourself, and you go down that street, and you get to that address, and there's no house there that you can see. So now, are you expected to still believe that you can go to this party? Or, where are you at that point? Because for me, I'd be like, I guess this party's not happening. And
Right.
now that's me not believing. And now the consequence of me not going to this party because I just can't make myself believe that it's happening, is that I get burned in my house.
Right. This is my new favorite analogy, Mac. I can't believe I've never heard this before. This is amazing.
I just,
Well,
I just spun it up.
Oh, my bad.
No, you're good.
Okay, so a better analogy to fit the Christian belief would be this. I invited you to a party. You received the invitation, the crumpled up, stepped on, water damaged invitation that Justin mentioned. And it's not necessarily that if you don't come to this party.
This is supposed to be analogous to the Christianity, right? So you're saying that God, how does the person know that they're being invited?
I've said it that I've given up to you guys that it is faith. At the end of the day, I can't bring you a solid piece of evidence. For me, it's Hebrews 11, 1-4. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. That's pretty much what I base my entire belief in.
So you just have to believe already. Like you just have to throw caution to the wind and believe even though there's no evidence.
If you knew me personally, then that's the kind of person I am. I'm that kind of person.
There are Mormons and Muslims and Hindus that say similar things. Who should we believe, you or them?
Right.
Unfortunately, but if I may finish, to quickly answer your question, I would say me, but again, that's a decision that you make up. If you want to believe me, then that's fine. But if not, then it's a choice. But let me finish my analogy. The invitation is more of like, hey, this entire place is gonna burn. Your neighborhood, your whole neighborhood is gonna burn down if you don't come here. I invite you to my place where it's safe, where you'll be protected from all the fire, from that fire. Like I said, or not like I said, but you said,
who lit the fire though?
Who lit the fire? Based on this analogy, we did.
Because in the analogy, I think you're missing it, because God is the one who lit the fire. God created hell. Right. So if the analogy was accurate, it would be, I made a fire and then I invited you to the party. If you
I don't think that's the analogy. I think the analogy is that I created you. You guys decided to play with fire and your straw and what.
Look,
if I may finish,
the fire
please.
Not analogous to hell?
If I may finish.
Yeah, but just to clarify, is the fire analogous to hell?
Yes.
Okay, so then if we're sticking with the analogy, if we're sticking with the analogy, right?
I haven't finished the analogy though.
No, but we're talking about the fire, right? The fire is analogous to hellfire. God created hell. Hell is a location. Hell is a space. We didn't create it. The angels didn't create it. So if it's strictly analogous, God would be creating the fire in your analogy. Otherwise, it's not analogous.
Right.
That's right. That's the misunderstanding. Hell is not a place you are sent to that God created in a separate room for you. Hell is separation from good.
That's not in the Bible.
That's what it is. Yeah. Okay. It's not in the Bible, but
no, that's a quote from C.S. Lewis.
Really?
Yep. It's not in the Bible anywhere.
Cool. Yeah, but as a Catholic, I think you should know that the Bible is not. We believe in tradition of the
Thanks, Ricky.
church fathers.
Right.
But let me finish my analogy real quick.
Go for it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You guys, live in a wood and straw houses, pretty much flammable houses made of flammable objects. You guys are out there playing with fire, which is our sin. We're out here lying, murdering, hating, whatever. You guys are out there playing. I send you this crumpled up, messed up invitation. If you come here, my house is made of non-flammable material. Again, it's up to you guys to accept it or not. That's my analogy. That's a better analogy for
analogy, because
but you see how it's disanalogous, right? You see why it's disanalogous.
I can't see your house.
Yeah, of course. You can't see my house.
Yeah,
like I said.
So why should I believe it's made of non-flammable materials?
There's two problems.
Again, it's faith.
So Mac is saying we don't have the evidence to know that the invite is even true. And Danny is saying that it's also not analogous because the person who started the fire is the same one who sent out the invites. And also Dexter on YouTube, thank you for the $2 super chat. Dexter says, this isn't an analogy, it's a straw man. I actually agree. This is bordering on a straw man analogy. In order to make this congruent with hell and paradise and whatnot, then it must be true that the fire was started by God. That's starting point number one, right?
I disagree with that. I think we personally started that fire.
Well, who created
When
hell?
Adam and Eve. Um. Okay. I don't want to answer that because you kind of threw me off with the whole C.S. Lewis created,
Oh
my
yeah,
kind of analogy.
yeah.
So I
But
need
even
to.
if you're
I
right,
don't.
even if
I
it
don't want to
was,
make a.
but let's just presuppose the
You look
Lewis.
just like my older brother.
Yeah. Yeah, even if we were
I'm sorry.
presuppose the Lewis account of hell, there's still
Yep.
a problem because it's the God makes the decision as
Yep.
to whether you're with him or you're not. Okay?
Right. The variables are controlled by God, right? So
Oh,
God is the one that decided that if you're not with me, you will suffer and get tortured.
yeah. No, you know what? You kind of threw me off with that whole, what I believed hell was.
Right.
C.S. Lewis. I need to do research on that. So I guess, yeah,
But
my
even if you're
analogy,
right, but what I'm
my
saying is that even if you're
if I may
right,
fin my friend, can I finish, please?
but I don't understand what you're trying to finish.
What I'm trying to finish is I'm kind of conceding to you guys that my analogy, it no longer for me. I can't believe that if it's not what my Bible believes in. So I completely throw it
But
off. So
even if
like I
you're
said, I
no,
concede to
but
you guys.
the point I'm making is that even if you were correct and Justin was wrong and it's straight up in the Bible, it doesn't escape the issues that we're raising. So it shouldn't throw you off. I'm prepared anyways to grant you that hell is not a location or thing that's been created. At the end of the day, though, God decides whether you're with him or you're not.
Right.
We decide that.
Well, let me ask you a question, right? So hell is essentially the consequence for sin, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Who decided what the consequences of the sin would be?
God.
Okay, so then God is still ultimately in control for deciding who goes to hell and who doesn't go to hell.
Yes, Jesus is the judge of that. Yes.
Right. So at the end of the day, God is not required to send anybody to hell, is he?
If he wasn't just, then yeah, I guess he doesn't have to send you to
Well,
hell.
Why
But
would it
my
be,
my
why
Does it-
would it be unjust to not have eternal punishment?
I don't want to come off like as mean, I guess, but I'll use myself as an example. Because I've sinned, because I've lied, because I've murdered, because I've lusted, committed all these things that God said is not right. God has to judge me based on that.
Right, but
And if he said,
why does justice mean that God must eternally punish?
Right, because in the legal
Makes sense,
system
it
here
does.
on Earth, nobody gets eternally punished. That's a nonsensical thing.
life without parole, that sentence,
Well,
not
it's still
eternal.
temporary.
life without parole,
It's till you
it's
die.
a permanent,
Yeah, when you die,
right?
it's
It's
over.
the punishment is jail.
When you
That's, I
die,
guess,
it's
hell,
over.
But you're not in jail
right?
forever, you die.
Life, right? You're in jail for the rest of your life.
But that doesn't mean
That's an
eternal.
end. That's still an end point.
Eternal means no ending.
Yeah, I guess this is a new analogy.
No, look.
God, yeah, God. Let's say God is the judge. We are the defendants in this case, and we are found guilty.
Yeah. McDinosaur, do you have
An
children?
analogy for this.
Oh God, I hope not.
Sorry, I know we got 3 people talking to him now. Sorry for the confusion. McDinosaur, do you have children?
You could call me David.
David, do you have children?
I do not.
Okay, I've got children. Mac, do you have children?
I do not.
Danny, you look like you're 12 still. You definitely don't have children.
We're deciding
Danny looks
right
like
now.
he slays the ladies.
I'm
He does.
married. I'm married, and we're 30. I'm 31 years old. She's 34, so we're
No,
about.
you're not. You're not 31.
So Here's one of the things that I've learned from being a father, right? There's nothing. There's not a single thing my child could ever do that I would want them to be tortured for even a year, much less eternity. My child could point a pew-pew at my face and shoot me in the face and end my life, and I still wouldn't want him to be tortured for all eternity. There is just simply nothing that I could do that would make me want my child to be tortured for all eternity. For it's very difficult for me to believe that there is a creator, that we are his children, and he loves us, and the Bible says that he's merciful. But for the mere crime of not believing that he exists, that he's willing to torture us for eternity. That, to me, stretches every measure of credulity I can find.
Well, doesn't mercy entail one asking for forgiveness?
Well, mercy, if God is merciful, then it entails that he's suspending justice. You said earlier that he has to send you to hell because he's just. But first of all,
Right.
that's not a just punishment for the crime. That's an unfitting crime for the punishment. But if you believe that God is all just and he has to sentence you for your crimes, then you can't say that he's merciful, which means every Bible passage that talks about God's mercy is a lie.
Well, but then that would mean that we're forgetting Jesus' sacrifice. Jesus gave us a way out.
You found it. Yes, you found the
There we go.
contradiction. God cannot be just and merciful at the same time. If he's merciful, then Jesus is unnecessary. If he's just, then Jesus is an overreaction to justice. There's nothing about hell is just.
I
Finite
don't,
crimes that us beings on the earth commit will never be justified by eternal punishment.
yeah, well, I did not. Huh, that's interesting
All
that
right.
you say that.
But
But
listen, Dinosaur, I really like you. I don't want to keep hammering you
yeah,
because
no, but
you've been a
if
really
I may
good
put,
guest.
yeah, just my last word, because you guys uh are really gonna make me study now, because I really want to come back and have this back and forth again. But if I may just close this out, for me, God can be merciful and can be just at the same time. Again, our way out of eternal suffering is Jesus. He died. He took on the punishment that we deserved so that we may be with him. And that's God's promise.
Right.
And again, it's a choice. It's an invitation. You don't have to accept it and you don't have to deny it. That's my closing
All right.
statement.
Well, listen, Dinosaur, it's good to talk to you. I appreciate you being here. You've been kind to us the whole time, and we appreciate oh, sorry, I got a burp. We appreciate you for that. So come back whenever you get the opportunity to, and I'd love to talk to you.
I guess, DM you? How do I send you a DM? I want to come back here.
Yeah, so you can follow me on either YouTube or on TikTok. I think you're on TikTok right now. So just shoot
Yeah.
me a direct message and say, hey, I'm the Dinosaur. I talked to you. And then I'll follow you back. And then if you want to, we can even dialogue off of TikTok. We can talk on Discord or something like that, and we can discuss some of these topics. Because I know, like right now, we're having a very public discussion about
Right.
very intimate details. And I know that sometimes it's better to have these discussions offline. And I don't want to alarm you, but some of us here are like, we're really like, you're kind of new at the apologetics game, but we're actually like old hats, right? Danny's been in the philosophy game for a long time. He's the best philosopher I've ever met. I actually have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in biblical studies. I know the book inside and out, right? So like, you've come into the lion's den and you've done a great job defending your position, but we've been in your
You made me
position
believe
before.
not.
W-
Okay.
We've been in your
Yeah.
position before. We used to be believers and now we're not, right? So
Yeah.
the path forward to truth is always going to be dialogue, and it's always going to
100%.
be taking in new opinions, things that you've never heard before. But I understand that it's hard to hear that while you're on a live and in front of like 700 people. So I don't want to like
No,
Yeah.
I actually prefer this. I want to because, iron sharpens iron. I
Right.
guess that's how that saying goes.
Yeah, it
I
is.
want to do this because I've wanted to get into apologetics, this whole time. I just didn't know how. So I'm like, you know what? I actually was just scrolling YouTube shorts and you just popped up. So,
Sure.
God's plan, I guess we could say.
I
So
suppose so.
I really want to come back. I want to come back and do this because I want to, as a Catholic,
Right.
I want to make this. I want to do this for the rest of my life, defend my faith. So
Maybe
I know.
consider why apologetics are necessary.
yeah, no, and I appreciate. I saw you, talking to the other guests, and I guess the reason you kind of kicked them out and kind of treated them that way is because they were being cocky too. So that's why I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna come, humble myself, kind of listen. I'm sorry if I'm shivering because it's really cold.
No, you're
I'm in
fine.
Vegas, so
Well,
yeah.
you talk about Robert Griffin or whatever his name was. Was that the
Yeah.
guy? I kicked him. Listen, he was just kind of a pompous jerk, and I know a lot of people
Yeah,
thought that he was not. But I've seen
no,
Robert before. I
he was
actually
cutting you off.
I
Yeah, he
know.
was like talking over you. So yeah, like I understand.
Yeah, and I get it. Sometimes you cut people off, but he made a pretty good habit of it. And
Right.
then he wanted to preach. He wanted to talk for 30 minutes without having any response. And again, I've
Wow.
seen him before. This is not my first time seeing him. And I know that if you're in the audience, you might not know that. You might not know that I know who he is. I've seen him before. I know his shtick. I know his routine. It was nothing new for me. So I didn't have the patience. But
No, yeah, and it's disrespectful to you. You're the host, so you control everything here. So I want to kind of to give you that respect.
yeah. And to be fair, when I'm on somebody else's live, I let them run the show. I let them control the course of conversation. I don't come into their
Mhm.
live and then dictate the topics that we're going to talk about and how we're going to talk about it.
Yeah, and when I first kind of ran into your live, I had that emotional reaction, and I was like, "What the heck?" And I'm gonna come, and I'm like, nah, that's not. We're not gonna get anywhere that way. So I want to
Right.
listen to what you have to say and kind of learn from there.
Right.
I appreciate it. Thank you guys.
Just
Take care. Have a good night.
remember your original bargain, David.
What was? Yeah, no, for sure. No, 100%. I have that in mind that if you guys can really, shake my faith enough, I will become an atheist and I will, bash the Christians with you guys on this live,
All
hopefully.
right.
So
Come
we'll
on
see.
over. There's
Well,
no how.
yeah, come on back. Listen, we don't have a problem so far with most of the Christians unless they come up here and say crazy things like
Yeah.
they'll justify misogyny and they'll
No.
justify all kinds of horrible things. When they start doing that, then we pick a bone with them.